Hello, you are watching India Today Global. I am Pranay Upadhyay. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be embarking on a two-nation tour to United Kingdom and Maldives. His visit to UK, London, will be very significant and important because an important deal, which is the FTA, Free Trade Agreement between United Kingdom and India, will be signed during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit. India and UK share a long history of trade as well as politics. To break down this issue, what is there in store for India in this FTA, I am being joined by Ambassador Yashvardhan Sinha, who has served as India's High Commissioner to London. Sir, welcome to India Today Global.
Thank you very much for having me.
So my first question to you, how and why this India-UK FTA is important for us, for India and India's economy?
I think you need to understand this in the context of the FTAs that we have signed so far. We have not been a prolific signer of FTAs in the past. However, the last decade or so, or slightly more, we have concluded around 13 FTAs. But this is the first FTA with a major developed country. We have FTAs with Australia and the UAE, but among the G7, for instance, this is the first big country that we're going to go in for an FTA with big economy, rather not country, that we're going to go in with an FTA. I've been to put it in context. The fifth largest economy in the world and the sixth largest economy in the world are going in for an FTA. So I think it's important in that sense. Of course, you referred to the history. There is a lot of history, starting when Sir Francis Roe was given rights by Emperor Jahangir to trade. And
Yes.
the East India Company was set up, and the rest is history. But what I'm saying is that this is important for us because 99% of the tariff lines are going to be opened up for Indian exporters to export, tariff-free, and that's very important. And it's sectors like textiles, clothing, gems and jewelry, footwear. Even manufacturing sector, many areas in the manufacturing sector will benefit by this FTA, and our exporters must take advantage of this FTA, and also because it covers the services sector, digital trade, services, professional services, educational services, etc. So I think it is a win-win situation for both countries. But I think the fact that we are being able to export duty-free or tariff-free to such a large array of goods and services would be of benefit to our business community.
You rightly pointed out, sir, that it's been a long negotiation, spanning over 3 years, at least 2 general elections in both countries, and I think 3 prime ministers in UK. So it's a long-run process. But what made UK to enter such a big FTA with India, and especially at a time because this is the post-Brexit, this is the first trade agreement UK is signing, and that too with India?
You see, it's not the first, but anyway, as far as the negotiations and for this FTA is concerned, it even predates the 3 years of negotiations that took place. I recall. In 2016, when Brexit took place, it was January 2017 when Theresa May made a sort of important speech at Lancaster House in London. I was present, and she identified India, among other countries, China, Japan, United States, Australia, as countries with which a globalized Britain would like to have closer relations, and of course that included a free trade agreement. So I think India was and has been, even before Brexit, we've had so many visits by David Cameron and one by Theresa May, and then of course later Boris Johnson, etc., Rishi Sunak. So I think the importance of a treaty for the UK, because they must understand that when they left Brexit, when they left the European Union after Brexit, there was a considerable fear that they would get isolated in terms of the access to their goods was concerned. And India has been a traditional market, a very big market that they were looking forward to sort of they were already entered, but to expanding their business here. And I think that's why, because they've had traditional investments also here, very large investments in the past. So I think for them, it was a very important, and you can see it because whichever government has been in power, conservative or labor, they have laid a lot of importance to this. In fact, 4th of May 2021, when both the Prime Ministers, Shri Narendra Modi and Boris Johnson, when they had that virtual meeting, if you recall, they had actually declared their intent to conclude a partnership, FTA. And of course, they had laid out 4 pillars of a larger partnership between the two countries. And then after that, of course, we missed deadlines. There was a Diwali deadline of 2022, if I recall
Yes.
correctly, that was missed. And I think in a way it's good that it has taken long, because there has been a thorough discussion or negotiation. And I remember January 2018, when they did announced a joint trade review that went into the negotiations, identifying product lines, tariff lines, where both countries could sort of work on and come up with a mutually.
Ambassador Sinha, it indeed took time, but can we say that it is fully ripe? Because on 6th of May, there was a phone call between Prime Minister Starkheimer, UK Prime Minister and Indian Prime Minister, and Keir Starmer and Prime Minister Modi has that phone call where they both congratulated each other, and that the announcement that it has been sealed. But as far as the FTAs are concerned, you also mentioned that we did not have a very good experience of signing FTAs, like especially from India ASEAN FTA to other FTAs as well. So what is there so special and so unique as far as this India-UK FTA is concerned?
So this is far more encompassing than some of the other FTAs. For instance, it covers services, it covers digital trade, it covers IT and IT-enabled services. So I mean, the scope is quite vast. Of course, it could have been the scope would have been wider if it had included investments, PTI, but that perhaps for a future date. But I think in both countries have been rather bold in defining the extent that they were prepared to go. For instance, we have accepted things like labor standards and environmental standards, which the West has been asking for a long time. And I think we, as a responsible economy, as a global economy, and as I said, the 5th largest economy, we have taken upon ourselves certain obligations which are important, and I think that facilitated the deal. I think also, since it's the first G7 country with which we've signed an FTA, I think it's significant because it could form a template or a model for future trade deals with other developed economies.
Very important point, sir. This could be a template for signing another FTAs with other countries as well. But right from migration and mobility agreement to this FTA, we have seen that now UK is more inclined to partner with India, and they want better integration as far as these two economies are concerned. You pointed out about the 5th largest and the 6th largest economy. We have superseded as Japan, and now we are like the 4th largest economy. So these two economies are important, but now we see that UK is more keen to have partnership with India. What are the factors you think that UK now want this partnership more?
You see, you must understand that UK has a very developed manufacturing industry, a very developed services sector, and India is a huge market for whichever country that wants to partner us. So I think right from the beginning, even before Brexit, I mentioned David Cameron, I think, made 3 trips here as Prime Minister. They were exploring business opportunities, and India is a very lucrative market. So I think they were very keen. And after Brexit, the urgency sort of was more. And if you notice, irrespective of which party was in power in the UK, Conservatives or Labour, they have made this of seminal importance, concluding a free trade agreement. You mentioned migration and mobility. Now, that's an important issue for us because we would like freer movement of people. But we must understand that Brexit was fought over immigration.
Yes.
And whichever party is in power, and Labour is far more liberal in that sense, well, it has to be sensitive to the mood of the people, to what the people want. But within those constraints, I think we've done well because, as far as Indian professional services are concerned, I think it will facilitate Indian professionals to go to the UK, work for short periods, and return. And I think the double contribution agreement that is going to be signed, that would be also very useful, because then, that saves professionals going there for making double social security contributions in both the countries. So I think it's important that we look at it not purely on the terms of mobility and migration. And you also must understand that
Yes.
there's a very large Indian origin population in the UK, and I dare say quite a few illegal immigrants there too. And the UK has been asking us to take back those illegal immigrants, people who are either overstayed or have come in illegally. The problem there, of course, is to identify their nationality. For us, it's very important from a security point of view and otherwise that we take in only people who are identified as Indians, and that it takes a long process, but that's another subject. So we must appreciate these constraints, and within these constraints, I think this agreement addresses some of these. For instance, NHS. Now,
Yes.
when I was there, a large number, I think it was 20 or 25% of the doctors and paramedics within the NHS system came from India. And initially, there were attempts to try and sort of stop large numbers coming in, but then they realized that the system was collapsing. They needed trained professionals. They didn't have any, particularly after Brexit, since a large number of Europeans who were part of the NHS system, qualified people, left. So I think they did again start taking, especially paramedics, but even doctors from India. So I think this is going to be a win-win for both the countries.
Indeed, it could be a win-win for both the countries. But let's move on to other subjects as well. Since Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be visiting United Kingdom for the 4th time, and you have also handled one of the visit as High Commissioner to London for India in 2018. And this is for the, after 2018, he's going for the first time now. Ambassador Sinha, if we may say that there has been some sticking points or some thorny factors in India-UK relation, especially in terms of the Khalistanis, the separatist elements, the land of UK being misused by certain elements, and also the economic offenders. We have been waiting for the extradition of Vijay Mallya, Nirav Modi, and Lalit Modi. He has now changed his nationality, in fact. But despite all assurances from the top, we are still waiting. And when you see the pictures of these economic offenders partying in London, this actually irritates, and India has every reasons to feel frustrated.
Yeah, this is an issue of long standing. I think unfortunately the UK has acquired the reputation of being a safe haven for such fugitives from justice, whether they're economic fugitives or not. And that is very unfortunate, particularly from the countries that were part of the empire, whether it's in the subcontinent or in Africa and elsewhere. So I think that is a reputation that the UK should be concerned about. I think their legal system is generally very good. I remember one case that you mentioned, I was quite closely involved, and the courts gave a very favorable verdict. But then even at the highest court, the Supreme Court, cleared the extradition of this particular case. But then the Home Office refused, or the Home Secretary refused to sign off the extradition, and we were told there were some legal hurdles. Now, those legal hurdles continue to exist. Of course, that's one aspect. The other, of course, is this concern about human rights of these fugitives once they're back in India, in terms of the conditions of the jail. And I remember one instance where our Prime Minister mentioned that some of these jails were actually built by the British themselves, and they imprisoned our freedom fighters, including the father of our nation. And since then, there have been immense improvements made to those jails. So I don't see why the hesitation, and I think they were quite dumbfounded. They didn't know how to respond to that line. And the fact of the matter is that there have been hurdles, created for the sort of repatriation or deportation of these fugitives. And this obviously is an irritant in the bilateral relationship, has been for quite some time, apart from, of course, the other perennial, hardy perennial, the Khalistani problem, the other problems that the Khalistanis create there.
Indeed, sir. Khalistanis have remained a factor in India-UK relation for quite some time, and like we have seen visuals of them, targeting the India House there, targeting the Indian High Commission officials there, even disrupting Indian High Commissioners there who have served during this course. So. You have also, I'm sure you must have raised this issue with the UK authorities at appropriate levels. What has been their response? Why they can't take action? Because India has been saying that these elements, they are on the UK soil. They are the problem for the UK society, the cohesion in the UK society, and also the law and order for the UK society.
Absolutely. I think in my tenure, we didn't have any major incidents, but I do recall, I mean, we had demonstrations, separately all the time. Sloganeering, etc. But there was one incident that I recall when during the Chogam, there were flags put up, and the Prime Minister was speaking at a nearby venue, at the Parliament Square in Westminster. An Indian flag was brought down and desecrated.
I was there, sir.
And if you remember, there was a lady journalist who was pushed aside when she protested. Now, I took that up very strongly with the UK government, and they, of course, came up with this thing about freedom. They expressed regret, obviously, and but the freedom of expression and speech, and how desecrating a flag is not an offence. But I took the line that the flag itself is not a private property. We did not put up those flags in Parliament Square. Who put them up? It was the Department of Media and Sports of the UK government. So would desecration of public property also be considered freedom of expression and speech? And I think they were quite embarrassed, and they then, of course, gave an unqualified apology. So the problem is that, and subsequently the year after I left, you were right, you referred to it, Independence Day, if I remember correctly, they attacked the High Commission. Now, such elements should not be tolerated, because it's like, if these people who create problems right now for us are a menace to society, really. They're antisocial elements that create law and order problems and tensions between communities. So it's not in the UK's interest to either encourage them or to condone such action. I think they should clamp down on some of these elements. I think since then there has been some action. I don't see there hasn't been any major incidents that I can recall, but still I think we really need the UK, the law enforcement authorities, need to be very clear that such elements should not be given freedom of action, and should not be able to do what they do. And not only do they then irritate and sort of spoil relations between two countries, but they also create law and order problems and tensions with within the larger community of South Asians and people from the subcontinent.
In the last, sir, what do you think Indians should expect, the deliverables, what India should be looking at during Prime Minister Modi's visit, and what is the message Prime Minister Modi would be carrying to UK in terms of the long-term India-UK partnership, as well as the, removing these sticky points which you mentioned about?
You see, this is Prime Minister, if I recall, fourth visit to the UK. And I think it's important that the UK and India work closely together, not only in the areas that we mentioned, but in terms of larger global issues. The UK, the permanent member of the Security Council, it's a member of the G7, still a very important player on the global scene. And India is an emerging power. I mean, India's, despite what some naysayers say, India, as you mentioned, whether it's become the fourth largest or is a moot point, but the fact is that India is galloping ahead. So I think India is being quoted by a very large number of countries all over the world. And I think the UK has the advantage of being the first mover in many ways, apart from knowing India well because of our history. They've also be the first G7 country that will conclude an FTA with India. So I think, but they must be mindful of our concerns. Now, another sticking point has been their, I don't know how to put it, but looking the other way as far as terrorism, cross-border terrorism emanating from Pakistan is concerned. I mean, there is a large constituency, not as large as Indians, but certainly a large constituency of Mir Puris and Kashmiris and Pakistanis there who influence their decision making, particularly the ruling party. But I think Prime Minister Starmer has been very, very clear, unlike his predecessor, the leader of the Labour Party, about zero tolerance for acts of terrorism. But I think they need to be far more forthcoming if they want to be truly strategic partners. And it doesn't just apply to the UK, it applies to all countries, really, as far as India is concerned. They need to be far more forthcoming in condemning cross-border terrorism, because that again comes to bite the whole world. I mean, I recall what happened in 9/11. I was in New York. We know where the epicenter of terrorism was then, and we know where the epicenter of terrorism is today. And the global community must take action.
Thank you very much for your time, Ambassador Sinha, and you helped our viewers to understand the complexities of India-UK FTA, which is to be signed on 24th of July when Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be visiting London for the fourth time. And this is a very important and a significant visit. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sinha.